Hi there and welcome to Artful Loving. In this episode, I want to deliver and dive into what my ideas are of what it takes to co-create a beautiful, fulfilling, passionate and enjoyable relationship. So stick around. Hi there, I'm Nick Tovey, relationships and intimacy counsellor and coach and author. Thanks for being with me. If you're new to the channel, go ahead, click subscribe and stick around for this conversation. If you'd like to dive in a little bit deeper and be a part of a community, why not head over to Patreon and become a patron of the channel. So what does it take to create a beautiful, fulfilling, passionate relationship? It's like this pinnacle, this mythological experience that we're all seeking and we're all wanting and we're all hoping for. And of course, we've all been dealt some pretty unhelpful myths around what that can look like and what we can expect from that and what it takes to create such a thing. Does such a thing even exist? I hear you ask. Well, that depends on what we're talking about, what we're expecting. One thing I know for sure is that there's no idea of perfection. There's no perfect relationship. Every relationship has its challenges. Every relationship, what we're talking about is a collision of two human beings with their own pain, their own wounding, their own experiences of a heartbreak, their own challenging childhood experiences, and their own vulnerabilities colliding together and expecting this collision, this amalgamation of human beings to come together and work and do this beautiful thing called relationship. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a really, really challenging thing to do, and particularly to do well. So I think we have unrealistic expectations, not only of each other, of what that relationship can be, but also of ourselves and what relationship in itself can be for us. That said, I know for sure from first-hand experience, and of course working with a lot of couples and individuals along the way, that we can make relationship be a beautiful container, not only for our own personal growth and our own personal life, but to support each other in that experience. There's something I just mentioned there around the relationship being a container. The way I like to look at relationship is that we're working with three entities. We've got person one, person two, and the relationship, entity number three. So when we're coming together as a couple, and of course I just want to note I'm being very mindful that we're talking about all sorts of different relationships here, and I'm talking about a relationship of two people. That's not always the case. We can have multiple people in a relationship, and that can be extremely challenging and really, really beautiful. That's probably a conversation for another time when we're talking about more non-monogamous, polyamorous situations. But let's park that and put that aside for another video. What I'm talking about today is let's be a little bit more traditional and conventional and talk about two people, regardless of what kind of human beings they happen to be. When we're talking about relationship, the same things apply whether we're talking about same-sex relationships, trans relationships, any sort of relationships. When we're talking about two human beings coming together to create this thing, this third entity called the relationship, it's really fundamental brass tacks that help us do that relationship really, really well. And that said, every relationship is unique. Every relationship is a unique collision of these two human beings, these two souls coming together. So to expect the relationship we're in today be the same as the relationship we were in last time is futile. That's not going to serve us well. We need to be able to adjust and adapt and work with the unique mix of these two human beings coming together. And of course, there are some fundamental practices, some fundamental skills, if you like, and capacities that we can develop to help that process work. So what are they? So before I jump into what I call the 4 pillars of a healthy relationship, what I call the revolutionary relationship, I want to just underpin that with the idea that, you know, I'm just a person coming at this from a place of, I'm a human being also. I've made mistakes. I've learnt some things, and there are no one-way ideas that are going to work for everybody. Everybody, every relationship, every human being is a unique package of stuff, and we all bring to life our own particularities, our own individuation. And of course, therefore, we always bring to a relationship our own individuation. So I want to sort of preface what I'm giving here, and this, everything I talk about from here on in, you know, let's have this disclaimer here. This is something I'm offering. If it's useful, great, take it. If it's not, discard it. That's okay. I don't mind. I think it's an important thing when we're talking about human development, personal development, that some things are useful, some things aren't, and no one teacher, no one therapist, no one coach has the answers. So I definitely don't claim to have all the answers, and some of the stuff that I've learned along the way is going to be useful for you. So maybe take it on board, see what you can take from what I'm delivering here, and see how it applies to you in your personal life and in your relational life. Like I said, a relationship is made up of 2 unique individuals, and those 2 unique individuals are always evolving, always growing, always learning more about themselves, about their place in the world. We're always on this forward trajectory of our own personal evolution. So therefore, as we come into a relationship, we have to understand that so is this other person. So I need to be able to accept their own growth, their own trajectory, the reality that who they are today is not who they're going to be tomorrow, in 5 years, in 10 years' time. So we need to have a certain level of surrender to the process of evolution, of the process that the relationship and the individuals that make up the relationship are going to change, develop, grow, and sometimes even grow apart and grow weary of the relationship, outgrow the relationship. So something I'm very clear on when I'm working with couples and individuals, when I'm talking about relationships, is let's discard the fairy tale idea that a relationship, the only successful relationship, is one that lasts forever. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. It doesn't apply. Evidence shows us that isn't true. It's not a fact. Relationships end. Relationships have their shelf life, and it's really important that when we're going into relationship and when we're navigating a relationship, that of course we want the relationship to last as long as possible. It may be our desire that it lasts forever, but the reality is somebody's going to die before the other person, even if we do end up being in relationship for the rest of that period of life. The reality is the relationship is going to end. So holding on to some fairy tale ideals is just going to set us up for disappointment. And it's also important to understand that a relationship is going to go through its natural cycles. There are ebbs and flows in life, so therefore there are ebbs and flows in a relationship that is made up of two people that are living. Yeah, so the individuals are evolving, they're going through all of their changes and their development and the ebbs and flows of life. So of course that's going to have an impact on how the relationship looks, feels, and what it needs to flourish. So even just at the outset of heading into a relationship, and it's important to have a posture of receptivity and understanding, and recognizing that this relationship is an entity in itself. It has its own life, its own trajectory that it needs to go on. So it's up to us as the individuals to be sensitive to that, to understand what the relationship needs, not just what I need. Yeah, of course that's important, what I need. We need to be in touch with what we need, and we need to be upholding what we need and what each other needs, of course. And the relationship also has its own life, its own needs. So when we get to a point where the relationship just isn't working, just isn't functioning, and we've done what we can do in order to inject some life to nourish the relationship and help it move in a positive direction, and still it just doesn't seem to be working, it doesn't seem to be serving each other's needs, it's quite likely that that relationship has reached its shelf life and we need to go our separate ways. We can also do that well. Yeah, we can also end a relationship with some intentionality, with some consciousness, with some sensitivity and compassion for the fact that this is hard, it's a difficult thing to do. So many relationships end in really bad and messy ways. Anyway, that is a podcast for another time, an episode for another time. Let's park that one, put a sticky label on that one. Ending relationships, really important how we can do that well. So I want to present to you a map that may be useful. And of course, like every map, it's a guide in which we use to traverse a certain landscape, to navigate a certain landscape. So of course, those maps can be useful, but we need to hold it with a little a loose grip and recognize that, of course, twists and turns and blockages in our path come along the way. But of course, a map can be useful in order to help us navigate certain territory. So this map, what I call the map that I'm using here is what I call the revolutionary relationship. And this idea of the revolutionary relationship is something I've been working with for several years now in my work. And that's a program that I deliver for couples, a long-term 3-month program that I take couples through a particular structured journey in order for them to help them really find a beautiful way of making and creating their relationship and coming together with a shared ideas, shared meaning, and shared skills in which they bring to that relationship with a shared vision of why they're doing their relationship. So the map of the revolutionary relationship has 4 pillars. The first pillar is authenticity. What does that mean? That whole word authenticity has such it's a buzzword for today's personal growth movement and coaching world and just in life in general. But what does it mean to be authentic? To be authentic in the way that I'm using it is about showing up as you are in that moment. Nothing more, nothing less. It's very simple when we bring it down to those brass tacks level. I think what we can get caught up in is this idea that there's an authentic self that I need to be. But that in itself is an ongoing question, an ongoing journey. We are consistently meeting deeper parts of ourselves and learning about ourselves and our place in the world. So authenticity is a fluctuating experience. So what I'm wanting to bring to the revolutionary relationship, to doing relationship really well, is about recognizing where you are in this moment and bringing that to the relationship. And of course that means about where we are emotionally, where we are in our energy levels, what are we desiring, what are our dreams and aspirations. So who are we in that moment, and how can we bring that to the relationship? The second pillar is accountability. What does accountability mean when we're talking about it in this context? Accountability is about taking personal responsibility, taking ownership of our emotional landscape, where we're at emotionally in that space, and being honest about that, not needing to hide ourselves from each other in order to take care of the other person and make sure they feel good about who we are in that moment. But it's about really being able to take full ownership for where we're at in that moment. Again, it's linked with authenticity, but it's about taking ownership for our authenticity. And it's also about being able to speak our truth in that moment. What is it that needs to be spoken? How can we have those hard, sometimes difficult and clunky conversations, but bringing full authenticity and accountability into how we communicate, recognizing that communication is our greatest ally for a good relationship. Also, it's about holding each other accountable and recognizing that we see this amazing being in the other person and we want them to live up to their greatest potential, recognizing that we're always growing, we're always learning, and we're always going to have moments of where we feel we go into a bit of a dip, an emotional dip, or we get a bit lost in our life. So it's about helping each other find those parts in ourselves that we can really grow into, but lifting each other up from that. So that then takes us into the third pillar, which is about advocacy. And advocacy is about being each other's greatest cheerleader and champion, and recognizing that this human being that I'm in relationship with, they have their own individual path, their own individual needs, desires, dreams, and aspirations. And I get to pay witness to that, which is an honor, it's a deep honor, but also I can't expect to cage that person into the idea of who I want them to be, or feel that I need them to be, or feel that they should be for me. I need to allow the other person to live their truth, to live their unique individual particularities, to be themselves. So advocacy is about supporting that person to be who they are, and doing what I can to understand who they are and learn about who they are, so I can best serve them and support them in that journey. Which then takes us on to the next pillar, which is abundance. So what does abundance mean? Abundance means infinite. It means an infinite amount. It means plenty to go around. So when I'm talking about abundance in the context of relationship, well, the first thing, and this is a bit esoteric, so bear with me. The first thing is a recognition that love is in abundant supply, and it's not a finite resource that I depend on you for as my partner. I'm not dependent. You're not my source of love. Love is this experience, is this embodied, felt experience that I can access at any time randomly in my life, and it is something, of course, I can orchestrate and create. But I can experience the feeling of love in a state of meditation, when I'm sitting watching a beautiful sunset, when I'm looking into the eyes of a baby, and when I'm self-pleasuring, and of course when I'm with my beloved. But I'm not dependent on my beloved for my supply. And that's the really, really important thing here, is that I have the ability to tap into this infinite well of love in any moment. and you're not my source for that love. So I can relieve you of the pressure and the responsibility of supplying me that resource, because that creates a codependent setup. And of course, if I'm dependent on you for my supply of love, you're always going to let me down. You're always going to fail, and therefore it's going to create resentment. It's going to create abandonment issues. It's going to create all sorts of problems. So recognizing that love is an abundant supply also is recognizing that in order to feed this relationship, there's a food of passion which is required. Passion is life force. It's creative life force, and of course it's something that we can create together in order to have beautiful love-making experiences. But it's not all about sex. Of course, it includes sex, and that's a beautiful thing. But a relationship's sexual frequency and aliveness fluctuates and changes, and every relationship is going to have their own way in which their sexual connection works and or doesn't work. But passion is about life force. It's about imbuing spontaneity and energy into the relationship, which of course we both take some level of responsibility for. And also about abundance, it's about recognizing that this relationship is an always changing experience. It changes, it fluctuates, and we need to be receptive and to adapt and change to the needs of the relationship. And an important part of that is that we need to bring some fun into it. Yeah, and recognize that we're doing this from a place of enjoyment. This isn't something we're victim to. It's not something. A relationship should never be something that we feel any sort of resentment about being in. If that's the case, we need to look at that. We need to do something about that, whether that means get out of the relationship or do something to change it. So we need to inject life into this relationship, and sometimes what is needed is fun, is play, is joy, and spontaneity. So these are, again, like I said, this is like guideposts for the map that we take. If we're traveling on a journey and there are certain signposts that come along and they help us on that journey, these are how I like to think of these 4 pillars of the revolutionary relationship. And like I said before, they're just a map. Yeah, they're just guides, and we need to then work out, okay, what are the skills and the capacities that I as an individual and we as a couple can develop in order to live by these guideposts, in order to keep each other on track and help each other to bring some intentionality into not only why we're doing this relationship, but how we're doing this relationship, and creating some good, solid rules of engagement and agreements around what this relationship is all about, and how we as a couple can help nurture the third entity, the relationship as the third entity, to make sure it maintains its usefulness, its joy, its light, its pleasure. It needs to be something we enjoy. And of course it changes and it fluctuates, and we all go into those times where it doesn't feel so fun, yeah, but the important thing is that we have these guideposts to keep us on track, to bring us back when things do go a little awry. So hopefully this is useful to you. I'd love to hear how this lands for you. What does this bring up for you? Do you get any sort of ideas around certain ways in which you could work on improving your relationship styles and your relationship, of course? If by chance you're a couple and you want to do some deep work with this, check out my website and the Revolutionary Relationship program. Maybe this is something that you as a couple can really dive in together and work with me along a good period of time to really dive in and master some of these aspects of your relationship. It's a really beautiful thing to do. Anyway, I hope this has been useful. I really look forward to engaging in this conversation with you. If you have any questions, please raise questions in the comments. If you've got any feedback to give me, and of course, if you've got topics that you want me to talk about, please put those in the comments. And of course, subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed, click the notification bell. And if you want to join me in the conversation even deeper, come over to Patreon. Until next time, have a fabulous rest of your day wherever you are, and keep loving.